Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Life in Motion. I'm your host, Grace Becker. I'm a licensed mental health therapist and enthusiast of life, and I'm so excited to have you all here with me today. I was just thinking about some things that have been going on in life lately, and I was like, what? I feel like it's been pretty good. Like some days are good. There might be moments where things are not so good. And then I was like, holy shit, I can't not talk about how my cat almost just cost me, one, a ton of money, and two, also gave me a panic attack, a legit panic attack, because background, my cat has pica, and he has had 3 surgeries so far. His name is Norman, and he is 11 years old. And he has had 3 foreign body surgeries in his abdomen because his poison of choice, his food he likes to eat, is rubber. For those who don't know what pica is, it's basically when animals can have it, humans can have it. Like it don't discriminate. And it's when a person or an animal eats things they shouldn't. So if you've ever seen the TV show My Strange Addiction, it's like if a person likes to eat the stuffing out of a couch or out of a pillow, or they might like to eat erasers or just things that are not edible. And my cat likes rubber. Some of the things he's eaten a rubber iPad case. He has eaten a rubber wine cork. And he has eaten she's not a baby anymore, but my baby niece's baby bottle nipple. And lately, I used to have a Brewmate, one of those like rubber tumblers, and it has the straw, the tip of it is rubber. And he gnawed on that. I was in a meeting or I was like about to start a meeting, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom before I do that. And I go to the bathroom and I come back, and the little fucker just had hopped off the table, and I look at my cup, and he had eaten the tip of my Brewmate cup, and he like hopped off the table and started running, and I was like, holy shit. And all of a sudden my heart just sank. I'm like, okay, step 1, let's go check Norman, my cat, and see if he's still chewing on it. So I went to go open his mouth, and there was no piece in there. So then I started looking around, just praying that maybe he chewed it and spit it out, even though I know damn well that cat likes to digest that shit. And nope, nothing around. So I'm like, okay, great. So my cat definitely swallowed that, and I started going into full panic because the last time he had his 3rd surgery, the surgeons told us, both, I don't know, told us that if he had to have another surgery, he probably would not survive it because the cats are so small. He has so many lesions, so there wouldn't be enough tissue to sew him back up, basically. So if he did it again, he would not survive it, most likely, they say. And it also costs a lot of money to have surgery, so that wasn't my primary concern though, but I was freaking out. And so I called my sister. She's went to school to be a vet tech, and she was a vet tech for a long time. And she also owns her own dog boarding facility and boards cats too. So I'm like, okay, if I'm in emergency, I'm going to call her. And she came through. She was so nice. She called my vet to see if they could do like a endoscope or if they could do induced vomiting to see if they can get it out. 'Cause it had been not that long. All the other times that he had swallowed rubber, it'd been like hours, if not days. And we didn't notice until either we went to go grab the iPad and we noticed that part of it was missing, or all of a sudden my cat is puking or like barfing up blood. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So it was always too late then to do induced vomiting. So when she called me back, she was like, okay, your vet doesn't do it. You'll have to go to the emergency vet, and you can see if he'll do induced vomiting. And if that doesn't work, maybe an endoscope to see if they can just scoop it out. But if those don't work, then surgery might be the option. But again, he most likely wouldn't survive surgery. So I rush him to the emergency vet, and I'm so nervous. This cat is my soul cat. I have him, and I have my other cat, Woody, who is getting his teeth pulled tomorrow. So these cats love to run up my bills. Basically, long story short, Norman is okay. They were able to do the induced vomiting, and he threw up the piece. Thank God. And he's home now, and he's back to licking plastic baskets, and I had to try and rubberify my house. I was going around and be like, okay, do we have any rubber utensils, any corks, anything out that he could like reach at. Thankfully, there's nothing that I could find. So here's to hoping that we don't ever have to go through that again. But that was definitely a jump scare. I don't know if anyone out there can relate. I think sometimes pet parents get a bad rap for, oh, it's just an animal, it's just a pet. It's like, no, that is my child. And I'm like, I carried him for 9 months. Okay, obviously I didn't, but he is my child and he's my soul cat. And I love my pet so much. And it is truly very, very hard to go through that. So if anyone has gone through that, or if you have lost a pet, like my heart goes out to you, and I'm so sorry, because it is so stressful and it is really hard to go through, and I'm just glad that he's okay. But now we can laugh about it. Now we can be like, haha, okay, the funny Norman, but like, also please don't do it again. So that was just a scary times. So I was like, I can't believe I gotta tell everybody about that. Things have been pretty good. It's so fucking hot here. It is to the point where it's like warm wind, warm, just dry heat. There's no sanctuary with a cool breeze or anything. But I always joke that us Midwestern people are never happy, because it's either too hot or it's too cold or it's too windy or it's rainy or it's cloudy when we wanted the sun. And so nothing ever pleases us, keeps us on our toes. But the other day, Jaden and I went to go play pickleball. Oh my God, I could only do like, I think we played one game, but then we had like a warm-up game, and then we played one game, and we had to leave because I was getting sunburnt, even though I had applied a shit ton of sunscreen. And I did SPF 50. Usually that's fine for me, but I had a very slight burn. I think it's formed more into a tan now, but I had a slight burn on my arms and on the back of my legs. And I was just like, holy shit, it is so warm. And like I said, it was like dry wind, warm wind. So there was just no cooling down outside. So we had to pack up and leave. But yeah, things have been pretty good lately. I've still been packing, still been working. So nothing to change there. But yeah, I hope you all are having a really great Thursday, and that you have a nice Friday and going into the weekend, that you have a chill weekend, whatever it is you're doing, whether you get to stay at home and have a nice weekend to yourself, or if you have plans. I hope that your social battery stays up, and if it's not, that you take the time and rest that you need. Just listen to yourself and your mind and your body and whatever it is you need. So let's get into what I have for you today. I was thinking, okay, this might be a little bit morbid, kind of a jump scare, but you'll see the title of this podcast, so you'll know. But today we're going to be talking about death and dying. And I don't really know what to tell you on how I just thought of this. I know I have talked about it a few times with clients, but this is also something I've just thought about a lot personally. Some of you know that my dad passed away when I was 11 years old. So I think after that, I've always kind of had some of these lingering questions of, like, does it hurt to die? Obviously, probably depends how you're dying. Like, does it hurt to die? Like, what happens to you when you do die? Like, what are some things you can do to cope with it mentally if you're just kind of aging out to that point where it's maybe not like an accident, where it's immediate? So I've always kind of just had these thoughts lingering in my mind, and I thought, if I have these thoughts, I bet there's other people out there who do too. So let's talk about death. So death marks that moment in life when your physical body stops working to survive. So your breathing stops, right? You breathe your last breath, your heart stops beating, your brain stops working. And because all of those things are shutting down, other vital organs like your kidney and liver stop as well. And all things that keep you going every day end. I told you this was going to be a little morbid. And this is something that all people eventually go through. However, understanding the technical process of death is very different compared to mentally coping with it. But we're going to get into both things. And just so you know, I've pulled sources from different, I think maybe 2 articles, but I'll have all the sources in my show notes down below if you're curious or you want to do more digging. So getting into it. So what happens when you die? With chronic illnesses or death from natural causes, multiple changes occur as your body's vital functions begin to slow down before eventually stopping completely. And so there's a few things that happen that kind of can cue to you that you might be getting closer to death. There's really no way to sugarcoat this. So we're just going to speak kind of frankly, we're just going to speak frankly. These are some things that happen. 1, more sleep and less physical activity. So you don't need as much sleep to recharge your mind and body. Instead, you sleep because your body doesn't have the energy for activity. So for like most people, living, going about their day, when you sleep, it's so you can not just recharge your body, but you can also recharge your mind and your brain and like kind of pick back up the next day for activity. Whereas for someone who's getting closer to death, it's more so it's just your body doesn't have enough energy for activity. So it's kind of just doing the bare minimum basically to get you there. That's why a person who's closer to death or who's older also takes more naps. Maybe they sleep longer hours. They're not doing very much physical activity. The next thing that you may notice is there's a decrease in appetite and thirst. So a dying body doesn't need the same amount of nourishment as a body that isn't dying. So a person's appetite might decrease. Maybe you can't eat food you once were able to, right? So that's why you might see older people having pureed food or just more bland food, something that's maybe not so hard to digest for them. And a person's appetite may decrease dramatically in days, weeks, or even months before their death. So this really is it depends situation. It just depends where you're at and like how you were caring for your body before you got to aging and dying. Your digestive system, all sorts of things impact this. So this is certainly not universal. This is just what I was finding in a lot of my research and in combination with some of the things I've already known. Another thing is that your digestive system may have a harder time processing food you eat, right? So eventually you may lose, or I say you, but a person may lose their appetite altogether. And the same goes for water, right? So you just kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily a forgetful thing, but you just maybe don't crave it as much. Me personally, I crave water all the time. I always have that motto of if you're dehydrated, you're too late. Like if you're at the point where you're dehydrated, it's too late. And so I always like try and keep drinking water. But when you're aging and you're dying, it's not something you're really desiring as much. The next thing you might notice is the inability to control your bowel or your bladder. So as one's digestive system slows, they may find it more difficult to poop. Constipation is also a common symptom among people who are dying. And one may also have less control over their pelvic floor, aka that can lead to uncontrolled peeing. So it's just, that's something that happens, right? I don't know if any of you maybe work as a CNA or a nurse or have somebody in your family or in your life that you have spent time with who's older, who might be closer to death. And this is something that really does happen, and it's not intentional. It's harder for them to control. It's just happens, right? Your body, your digestive system can't control that, and your pelvic floor muscles are weakening. So it just happens. Another thing that happens is the breakdown of a person's muscles and skin. So this is why, some people get wrinkles, that they might have more like excess skin, if that makes sense. Maybe not, I don't know, not flabby, but just have extra loose skin, so to speak. And it's common to lose weight and muscle mass when a person's dying. So, if you're getting older, sometimes people get much smaller, they lose muscle mass, they lose weight, and new skin cells don't replace the dying ones as rapidly, which then causes the skin to weaken, to wrinkle, to thin, to kind of have that like excess skin that we were talking about, which makes one more susceptible to things like bruises, cuts, bed sores. So that's why people who are aging or dying are more susceptible to those things. So you have to be more mindful about aiding to those needs. Another thing is withdrawal and detachment. So this is kind of where my particular expertise comes in, because I don't know too much about the medical side of things that I was just talking about. But I do know that a lot of people who are aging or who are getting, I say death, but again, it's not like they're going to drop dead tomorrow. It's It's a process, and it's something that's on people's mind. But withdrawal and detachment. So if people who are dying, they may begin to show signs similar to depression or signs of depression, which includes things like a down mood. They might not enjoy things they once used to. They may self-isolate, things like that. Those are some of the more common ones I see. So if you notice that maybe someone in your life who is getting older or who has maybe had these thoughts of death and dying, if they're starting to have a more irritable mood or down mood, if you notice they're not doing things they once liked to do, or if they're isolating themselves, maybe go check on that person. Make sure they're doing okay, see what they need, and just show up for them. But those are some signs that a person is maybe getting close to death and dying. Another sign, this is more common with things like suicide, but it does happen with people who are just dying naturally, is if they start giving things away. I've heard stories, and this actually is an episode on Gilmore Girls too, but I was just talking to somebody the other day, I can't remember who it was, and they were saying how their grandparent was like, oh, like go through the house and pick out whatever you want, and I'll put it in my will for you. So it can feel a bit morbid and hard to go through, but that's another sign that a person might be getting close to death and dying, is the depressed mood, the withdrawal and detachment, and trying to give away some of their things. Some other signs is declining or irregular vital signs. So your vitals include things like a person's temperature, your pulse, your respiration, your breathing rate, and blood pressure. So these numbers measure the health of organs essential for a person's survival, like one's lungs, your heart, and your brain. And when a person is dying, your body temperature drops, and your skin may feel cold or even clammy to the touch. Other numbers may be irregular or unpredictable as a person's vital organs, start to slowly decline, right? Because they're no longer working to keep you alive as you're nearing death. And from my research, what I gained, that is more so that sign is when it's like very close to death, maybe like weeks, days before, or hours. Very rarely are you going to see that like a month, I think, from what I've gathered. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But that's what I've gathered for that. Another one is agitation. We talked about that a little bit. I have seen this a lot with some clients, and that's when they will get like sudden bursts of energy or the feeling of restlessness, followed by long periods of sleep, which just kind of signals maybe that they're getting closer to death, or it's something that has been weighing on them. And when I see this, I've noticed that people are maybe feeling more capable of doing things that they realistically cannot do. Another good example is like a midlife crisis, not quite, but just kind of like all of a sudden having this burst of energy or feeling like restless, like you can do all sorts of things. And in reality, maybe you can't, right? Like you hear of a 45-year-old going and getting a motorcycle. I feel like that's the cliche that you hear about. And realistically, maybe they can't handle it. Maybe they got to stretch before they go, and it's something that they're just not capable of doing compared to maybe when they were in their 20s, 30s, whatever. I feel like that's the kind of cliche that you hear about. But when a person's nearing death, they might try to do those things, feel more capable of things they're not realistically able to do. They may even try to leave their bed, remove medical devices that they need, like an IV, and they might become frustrated with caregivers who are trying to help them. I know that when I've seen it, how it's shown up in my clients is I've seen people who just become more irritable and agitated with either the unknown of death and dying, or they become more irritable and agitated with people in their life. So as this one source that I was looking at, it was saying a person may become frustrated with their caregivers or people trying to help. I've experienced that as a person who's been that caregiver for their mental health. Sometimes people just become agitated because there's a lot of unknown answers that you just won't know until you go through something. Or it feels isolating because it's something that people feel that they're going through alone a lot of the time. Another sign is changes in how a person perceives their surroundings when they're getting closer to death. So the brain may process sensory information. So that's things like your five senses, the things you see, the things you hear, you smell, you taste, all those good things. They are differently. They are they're different. They are different from what they once were. Oh my gosh, tongue twister. And for instance, a sound that once seemed normal may seem scary or threatening. Or they may mistake one person for another, or they may perceive things that people around you don't, right? So like a person who's getting closer to death may perceive things around them differently compared to another person. And these differences in perception may be more noticeable at night than during the day. It just really depends on the person. I know that there's some people in my life who I kind of think of when I think of this one, right? Like one time my great grandma mistook my boyfriend for my cousin. That's kind of what I think of when I think of this. And they just perceive things differently around them. And sometimes others might get offended, but just know that it's not something that they're doing maliciously. Like my great grandma didn't mistake my boyfriend for my cousin to make anything awkward or weird or to be malicious. It was an honest mistake, and she's getting older, and it's just something that happens when you're aging. Oh, something really interesting with that one too is that some studies have shown that your brain releases a surge of chemicals as death approaches that may heighten your senses into a state of awareness or even hyperreality. So for instance, people who are dying often speak of seeing a bright light. I know I've seen or heard that before, like a bright light, like don't go to the light. And they may see themselves going on a journey where they'll reunite with a deceased loved one. I've also heard that before where different like images or you'll relive highlights of your life. Those are some common things that I've heard in stories, podcasts, movies, things like that, where people are like, you see a bright light, or your brain replays. I heard once that your brain, the 7 minutes before you actually die, your brain replays highlights from your life. So something that's interesting. Again, this is something, in my opinion, that you just don't really know until you're going through it. And that can feel daunting sometimes. Just of like, okay, gosh, like I get to replay these moments. And then once that's done, it's really over. And it can feel really daunting and isolating, and also reassuring to know that your last moments could be comforting, right? To see all the people that you love around you, or to see that bright light. Another symptom that you might notice, or I don't know if symptom's the right word, but just signs that you may notice that someone is nearing death, is periods of unconsciousness. So as death approaches, you may drift from sleep into unconsciousness, much like being in a coma or dream state. You may wake up later unaware that you were unconscious. Toward the end, you'll remain in this unconscious state of extended rest. I don't know if this is correct, but when I read this, I was replaying that scene from The Notebook when they like fell asleep together, the old man and the woman, and they just fell asleep together in the bed. To me, that's kind of what dying in your sleep represents, right? Drifting from sleep into unconsciousness, like a coma or dream state, and then eventually you just kind of die from the sleeping to unconsciousness to death. So that's kind of how I read that. Another interesting thing with this one is that research suggests that even as your body transitions into unconsciousness, that it's possible that you'll still be able to feel comforting touches from your loved ones and hear them speaking. Touch and hearing are the last senses to go when we die. I think that's so freaking sweet. That kind of makes me want to tear up a little bit, because those are the things that I think if I could be with my dad again, I would love to hear him and I would love to hug him, right? I would love to hear his voice and to like hug him, like to feel him again. And I think it's really sweet that as you're dying, those are kind of the last senses to go. And it's just really, really cool to know that, you know, as you're drifting into this coma-like unconsciousness, into death, that you could still feel and hear people around you, which is just really, really sweet. So those are kind of some of the signs to indicate that death is happening, and also what it's like to go through the dying process. Again, of course, to me, all of this research that I've been doing has been kind of leading to the old age and then dying. But if you're in an accident or something like that happens, it might be different, right? So the next question that I've often asked myself or that I've received from other people in this topic is, what is after death? And your body undergoes a series of changes after you die as it adjusts to its new state. And these changes unfold very quickly over a few days. So 1, your muscles relax. Your muscles loosen immediately after death, releasing any strain on your bowel or your bladder. And as a result, most people poop and pee at death. And your skin may also sag, making it easier to see your bone structure beneath. And I believe, correct me again if I'm wrong, there's lots of smart people who listen to this podcast, so if you know more about this, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Whether it's an accident, like a car accident, or whether it's dying because of old age, I think that the muscles relaxing is something that happens to all of them. You lose control of your bowel and bladder, so you poop and pee at death. But then that part about your skin may also sag, making it easier to see your bone structure beneath. I'm not sure if that happens to, like, let's say like a 40-year-old who passes away from an accident. I don't know if that's something that happens right away. When I was doing, again, my research, most of it was around the aging aspect of dying, so I think that's more related to that. Another thing is your temperature drops. So when you do pass, your body temperature gradually decreases about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit per hour, or 0.83 degrees Celsius for my other people who know what Celsius is. And eventually your body temperature will just match your surroundings, the things around you. So kind of like, okay, kind of how you keep your meat or your fruits and vegetables at a certain temperature in the fridge, your body will be the temperature of whatever is around you. And I don't know if any of you are true crime junkies like me, but I've heard stories where someone's murdered and then the murderer will put their body in a freezer, or they'll put them like in a cooler or something to keep the body from decomposing, basically. So another interesting thing about death and what happens after death. The third thing is your blood gets pulled downward. So after you die, gravity pulls your blood downward toward the earth, and your skin may look purplish red in the spots where blood pools. So once you're dead, your blood will start to like gradually come downwards towards the earth, towards the ground, and areas where like blood may not be able to pass through, might pool up and your skin might look purplish red. Another one is your body might stiffen. So a person's body might stiffen, their fists or their face and neck, and the stiffening progresses to the trunk of your body and gradually radiates outward to your arms and legs and then your fingers and toes. So what I think that just basically means is that once you pass, your bigger area body parts start to stiffen. So like your torso and your legs, your head, your neck, and then it kind of reaches out to your arms, your feet, your fingers, and then down to your little digits, right? Big motor body down to fine motor skills kind of are the last things to stiffen. So that would make sense. And lastly, your body loosens again. So after the stiffening process, a few days after death, your body tissues break down, causing the stiff parts to relax again. Oh, that was kind of hard to get through. I don't know if anyone else is feeling that. That feels a little bit more morbid to me than the things leading up to death. My next question was, what does dying hurt? It really depends. Pain is a part of life and may also be a part of death, similar to how you experience different types of pain sensations in life, from the type of sensation to how intense it feels. So like getting a, like a paper cut compared to getting like your finger chopped off. a little bit different. A person may also experience various pain sensations in death. It much depends on the cause of death and whether you have access to pain medications. For instance, you may die suddenly and experience no pain at all. So it really depends how you die, right? So some of these questions, it just is a huge it depends area. But basically your pain could be nothing at all. It could be it could be severe. Do you have like a slow dying process? Again, I go back to my true crime that I like to listen to. and I hear about victims, survivors who were attempted to be murdered, and how painful that must have been for them to be so close to death, and then some of them come back and some of them do not, and that to me would seem very, very painful. So it just depends. And often dying bodies fight to survive, right? Our survival instincts kick in, our fight, flight, or freeze, and our bodies are programmed to feel pain without medication. So our brain will try and send like neurotransmitters, will try and send like help to aid in the areas that hurt the most. So for example, a body that's losing a life-threatening amount of blood will automatically detect the limited blood supply to a vital organ, and this response keeps those organs alive. So like your body just responds to keep you alive, which I think is so beautiful, that our bodies love us so much that they try and keep us alive. Like that just makes me want to tear up. Our bodies love us, and they do their part to try and keep us safe. It fights in that survival instinct, right? And in emergency situations like this, a medical professional can try and save your life and lessen your pain too. So the pain aspect, it depends, right? You can, if you're on medication or if there's like help that's on your way, sometimes that can ease your pain. And lastly, there are things like hospice care, right, where medical professionals or experts are there to provide comfort and care as a person is dying, and they recognize a body's survival response, and that may cause pain. And so they provide comfort with medication and whatever else they can to help that person. So that's kind of the response to if dying hurts. Lastly, and this is where I feel I can provide a lot of my personal expertise, is how to mentally cope with dying. I'm going to talk about the 5 stages of grief, and I'm also going to talk about the dual process model. But there are some other things, right? So you can, 1, talk to a therapist, go to group therapy, talk with friends, family, especially people who may be going through similar things. If you are aging or dying, or if you are losing somebody who is aging and dying, and you have other people that you feel comfortable to talk to, whether it's a professional or a family member or a friend, that is so helpful. And it's especially helpful if they're maybe going through something similar, because you can relate to them and understand how they may be feeling. If you're feeling anxious or fearful, focus on things you can control. That sometimes can help. It is important to make space for your feelings, right? Make space for your feelings if you're feeling anxious. If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling sad, make space for them. Certainly, I'm not saying to just like deny, like shove it down, like don't talk about it, avoid it. Certainly not. But I also understand the need to try and do things. So rather than working ourselves up over things we can't control, it can be helpful to focus on the things that we can control. So that's things like putting a will together, getting a care plan together depending on the death, right? Like hospice care. You can put together like funeral plans. You can also work on connecting with family and friends. Other things is you could try and communicate with children too, who may be going through the loss of a loved one, to try and either prepare them for it or just to just get time with them too. A lot of people who are religious, spiritual, or have cultural traditions, I didn't really talk about that a lot in this episode. I tried to take a more scientific, matter-of-fact route with this, but this is absolutely a huge support for a lot of people. Whether you have a cultural tradition, if you have a religion you practice, or if you're spiritual, that can also bring a lot of comfort to people who are coming to their final days or have lost somebody who has died. And then also like just taking care of your mind, your body, and emotions. If you need to rest, like you just don't want to overdo it, right? So taking care of yourself and just finally like give yourself permission, right? It's okay to rest and to take the nap, or if you want to talk about it with somebody, talk about it with somebody. If anything, if you were to talk to a person who may be feeling the same thing, they're probably also hoping that they could have somebody to talk to. So it might be not only a relief for you, but for the other person too. And then the other one that I came up with outside of the 5 stages of grief and the dual processing model was identify things that bring you joy. Whatever it is that brings you joy. If it is things like crafting, going for walks, like watching a certain TV show, reading, like fishing, whatever brings you joy, purpose, and comfort. Spend time doing those things because it really can help with coping as your life comes to an end, right? A lot of people, when they get to that stage of death and dying, that's when they really are reflecting on their whole life and their purpose and their regrets and the things that their accomplishments, things they're proud of. So sometimes when you can acknowledge these are things that bring me happiness and you can do those things towards the last stage of your life, that can be really helpful and giving you purpose before death. So that was the last one that I've came up with, that I've talked with clients about before. But at the end of the day, death, whether you have lost somebody or you are going through accepting death and dying, you're grieving, right? You're grieving the loss of a loved one and the memories you had together, or you're grieving your own life and accepting that, you're coming to the end of it. And I've talked about this before, but accepting doesn't mean you're agreeing with it, right? I'm sure a lot of people don't want to die and they wish they couldn't, that they wish they had more time, but agreeing and accepting are two different things. So this is where the 5 Stages of Grief by Elizabeth Kolber, what's her name? Kolber Ross, the model, the 5 Stages of Grief. But it was originally developed to describe the emotional journey for terminally ill patients. And this model has since been adapted to more broad terms. So like losing a loved one, like going through a breakup, going through like major life changes, right? Because you can grieve more than just simply death. But there's 5 stages. The first one is denial. So this is when a person might say things like, this isn't really happening, kind of like denying it, not accepting of it. And it's a natural defense mechanism that people go to try and protect themselves, right? It's because they're feeling that numbness and that disbelief that this could be happening. So they'll just deny it the first shot. The second stage is anger. So sometimes people will ask, like, why did this have to happen? Who's to blame? They might even place blame on others or themselves. This is where you might see some more of that aggression or irritability. And you may feel anger toward the person, right? So if a person is dying, they may feel anger towards their caretakers, towards family, towards doctors. If you're religious, towards whatever you believe in, like God or the universe or the world, right? So sometimes anger is where you can see some of those signs coming through, and that's a big one. The third stage is bargaining. So a person may say things like, if I had done this differently, maybe I'd still be here. Or if I had exercised more, if I had eaten better, maybe I wouldn't be going through this now. And this often includes irrational, unrealistic expectations, right? Like getting into that what if or should or shouldn't, which we know I'm not a fan of, right? Because it just basically just not helping us, placing very unrealistic expectations on ourselves. And it attempts to reverse the reality in our mind, right? When we're bargaining, we almost hope that if we bargain enough, that we can go back and we can change it, but we can't, right? So that's when it's helpful to focus on things you can control. The fourth stage is depression. So some people might, like we were saying earlier, not as interested in things as they once were, might try and self-isolate. They might say things like, well, what's the point of anything now? Like, it's all just, everything's going to hell. Like, what's the point? And this deep sadness, emptiness, and loss of interest is very natural. It's a natural response. It doesn't always require clinical diagnosis unless it's prolonged and it's impairing a person's life, like if they're still working, if it's their work, if it's their relationships, mental, emotional health. Finally, the last stage is acceptance. And like I was saying before, acceptance doesn't mean agreeing. So a person who reaches the acceptance stage might say something like, okay, this is real and I'm learning to live with it, right? We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to like it. We just have to accept it. And just like when you can finally come to that stage of acceptance, that's when you can finally find a way forward to cope, right? And to move on from it and find better ways that are not going to be the denial and the depression and the anger and the bargaining. So that is the final stage. And just so you know, these stages are not linear. You can bounce around, you can repeat, you can skip, or you can feel multiple stages all at once. So certainly never feel like you have to go in this order for it to count, or that, I skipped the bargaining stage, or I never really felt angry, or I never really denied it. I just went right into anger. Like, that's totally fine. And that is part of the grieving process. Not everyone's the same. It's not linear. This is your own journey and you're going on it. The other model I wanted to talk about was the dual process model. And this model acknowledges that grief is not just an emotional process, but also involves managing practical life challenges or changes, I should say. So this kind of gets into what I was talking about, like controlling what you can, like the will, and people who are dying who might be like, oh, go put a sticky note on whatever it is you want in the house, right? And I'll put it for you in my will. And there's basically two main processes with the dual process mode. The first one is loss-oriented coping, and the second one is restoration-oriented coping. And the first one, this is when you're facing the pain of grief and you're maybe crying more, remembering, yearning, talking about the deceased, right? Or if you're the person who's dying, like talking more about that. So that's the loss-oriented coping area, right? You're trying to cope with the loss. You're facing the grief directly. You're crying, you're remembering, you're talking about death and the deceased. The second one, the restoration-oriented coping area, is when you're trying to adapt to the changes in your life. So roles, routine, identity. This is when you get into that problem-solving mode, trying to handle finances, maybe trying to work on being alone, or you'll distract yourself or take breaks from the grief. So taking those breaks as you need to rest and do different things to actually take care of yourself. And the key insights with this is that a person naturally oscillates between these two roles, these two models, and thinking of it in waves sometimes can be helpful, right? Some days you're in the depths, other days you're rebuilding, and there's different focuses and strengths with each. It just really depends for the person, how they're logistically managing the death and dying and how they're emotionally managing death and dying. So I do like that one because it is very practical, very realistic of, okay, we understand that death is nearing and we can also make space for our feelings. So I do like that model. I think it's realistic and practical and helpful. So yeah, take what you will, take what works for you and leave the rest. But that's really what I have for you all today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I know talking about death and dying can feel morbid, but also these are questions that we have, right? And it's not going to do us any good not talking about it and just, again, denying it or not acknowledging it. So it's helpful to talk about it, listen, and get some answers. If you liked what you heard today, please let me know in the comments, leave a review, leave 5 stars, share with people in your life. And maybe if you've learned something from today and you have someone in your life who maybe is going through this, or if you yourself are going through this, just know that you are not alone and that there are all sorts of services and resources and support for you in this world. You just have to take that first step of being vulnerable and asking for help, and then help will come. I really hope you liked this episode today. If you want to get a hold of me, you can email me at life.motion24@gmail.com. My Instagram is life.in.motion24, and my TikTok is life_in_motion24. Shout out to my editor, Ben. Thank you for all you do in editing my videos. I hope you like what you heard. You can watch this and listen to it on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all sorts of places that you get your podcasts from. I hope you liked what you heard this week, and until next week, embrace the chaos and find the beauty.